Is there any medical reason you can't give your best testimony today?
I have gone through cancer. I had two different types.
What types of cancer did you have?
I had colon cancer and uterine cancer.
And what type of treatment did you have for that?
Chemo and radiation.
Do you have a prognosis of your condition?
I am, as of now, cleared. But I'm still dealing with the after effects of chemo and radiation.
So at this point, you're cancer-free?
I am.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
All right. Now, Linda Kincaid is seated to my right. Do you know Linda Kincaid?
Yes.
Are you related to Linda Kincaid?
Yes.
What is your relation to Linda Kincaid?
She's my cousin.
Okay. And we just took the deposition of a very nice lady named Clara Gibbs. Do you know who that is?
Yes.
Who is Clara Gibbs to you?
That's my mother.
Okay. And we're here today in Kansas City, Missouri. Are you from this area?
Yes.
Okay. And let me back up and ask a foundational question. What relation, you know who Carol Hahn is, correct?
Yes.
What relation are you to Carol Hahn?
I'm her niece.
Okay. And was there ever a period of time when you were a child that Carol Hahn was still living in the Missouri-Kansas area?
She would come to Kansas in the summer, spring and summer, and then go to California.
Okay. And was during that period of time, was she married?
She was.
And was her husband Ray Kincaid?
Yes.
Okay. And then at some point in time, did Carol Hahn and Ray Kincaid stop going back and forth between this area and California and make their primary residence California?
Yes.
Were you ever, did you ever become aware that the marriage between Carol Hahn and Ray Kincaid ceased to exist?
Yes, I was told that he was a very abusive person, and she had finally gotten away from him.
Okay. And did you understand that they get at some point divorced?
Yes.
Okay. And after that, did you ever learn whether or not Carol Hahn remarried?
Yes.
Okay. And did you ever learn who she remarried?
Yes.
And who's that?
Walter?
And at some point, did you learn that Carol Hahn sold the home that she had shared with Walter Hahn?
Yes.
Okay. And do you know where Carol Hahn went to live after she sold her home?
She went to live with a good friend of hers.
Okay. And do you know that person's name?
Martin.
Is that Martin Gludd?
Yes.
Okay. During the time that Carol Hahn was living with Martin Gludd, do you recall if you ever had any telephone conversations with her?
No, I did not.
Okay. When is the first time you met Martin Gludd?
When I went to California.
Okay. And when you say went to California, would that be the first time you went to California to visit Carol Hahn?
Yes.
Okay.
Linda wasn't allowed in Wildwood, so she set up a greeting place at McDonald's. Carol was dropped off at it, and we had a wonderful afternoon. You could see the love in Carol and Martin's eyes. I mean, he was right there at the door taking her in, was with her. She ate wonderfully. We had a wonderful time.
Okay, and did that happen on your first visit to California?
Yes.
And in the first visit you took to California to visit Carol Hahn, did you come here exclusively to visit Carol, or did you come for some other reason?
It was mainly to check and make sure that Carol was okay.
Okay.
But we also came to be a part of the court.
So for this first trip to California, was it you, Becky Fletcher, and Clara Gibbs that made the trip from Missouri?
Yes.
And do you remember approximately how many days you visited the Wildwood facility so you could spend some time with Carol?
I believe we were in town for 3 days, and we made sure we saw her every day.
Did you understand in 2010 that Carol was living with Martin Glood, but at some point she left living with Martin Glood?
I was informed that they kicked down the door and removed her from her home and put her in Wildwood. We were isolated. We had no contact whatsoever. We didn't know where she was.
Okay, from the time that Carol was removed from her residence with Mr. Glood until the time that she was admitted at Wildwood, can you estimate how long that time frame was?
It was at around 2 months that we knew nothing.
Okay. And from your perspective, was Carol missing?
She was.
Did you make any efforts to try to find out where she was?
I believe my mother contacted Linda to see what Linda knew.
Okay. And were you worried about Carol during that time frame?
Definitely.
Okay.
We didn't know if she was dead or alive.
How did you come to learn after Carol was removed from living with Martin that she ended up in Wildwood?
I believe Linda found her and let my mother know.
Okay. Now, from the time that you learned that Carol was at Wildwood until the time that you showed up with Clara and Becky to visit Carol, did you make any effort to call Carol?
As soon as I found out where she was, I got the number and I called. There was 1 week I called the first 3 days, every hour on the hour, and got nothing but excuses.
Okay. And when you say you called, that means you called Wildwood every hour on the hour?
Every hour on the hour.
And you asked to speak with Carol?
Yes, I did.
And when you say you got excuses, do any of those excuses come to mind?
She was on the bus going up the mountain, which I had talked to her on the phone, and she hated that bus. I was told that she was eating whatever meal was close to the time I was calling. She was getting cleaned up. She was, asleep. Because I would start as soon as I woke up, do it throughout the day until it was time for me to go to bed.
How much time passed from the first day you tried to call Carol at Wildwood until you were successful in actually being able to speak with her?
It took a long time. I mean, the director of Wildwood called me because they were tired of me calling. And I simply told her I needed to know that my aunt was okay. And to do that, I needed to talk to her.
When you say the director of Wildwood, do you remember the director of Wildwood, what her name was, that you had this conversation with?
Lynette. And she had called me to tell me to stop calling.
Lynette Alvarado called you and told you to stop calling Wildwood?
Yes.
Did she tell you why she wanted you to stop calling Wildwood?
Because I was not on the list.
Did Miss Alvarado tell you why she wanted you to stop calling Wildwood?
Yes.
What did she say?
I was not on the list of the people that Carol could talk to. And then she ranted and finally hung up the phone on me.
She hung up on you?
Yes.
What was your reaction to that telephone call?
The truth? What a bitch.
Was the first time you were successful in being able to speak with Carol after you had this conversation with Deputy Ward?
It was weeks after, but yes.
Okay. So before you talked to Deputy Ward, every time you called Wildwood to talk to Carol, you were unsuccessful?
Unsuccessful.
Okay. Did you believe the reasons that you were being told in terms of why Carol couldn't come to the phone?
I did not believe any one of the reasons.
Why is that?
It was ridiculous. Every hour on the hour, she's busy. I mean, she had to sit down sometimes. She was in her 70s.
Yeah, how much time passed after you spoke with Deputy Ward before you were successful at speaking to Carol on the phone?
I'm not sure.
Okay. More than a month?
I'd say right around a month.
Okay. Now, do you remember approximately what the month and year was when you and Becky Fletcher and Clara Gibbs made the trip from Missouri to Yucaipa to go to Wildwood to visit Carol?
The first one
Yes, ma'am.
was in, I'd say it was September 2010.
Okay. And before you all got on the plane, I assume you took the plane?
Took a plane.
Okay. Was it your understanding when you flew to California in September 2010 to visit with Carol that Linda was prohibited at that time from seeing her mom?
We had talked to Linda, and we did know that.
During your conversation with Lynette Alvarado, that you indicated ended up with a hang-up, did you make any reference to an attorney?
I did. I think that's right before she started ranting and raving at me. It was, do I have to call an attorney and get an attorney so I am able to see my aunt?
Now, at some point, you said about a month or so after you spoke with Deputy Ward, you began to be more successful in being able to talk to Carol. Correct?
Yes.
And does that mean every time you called, you were able to speak with Carol, or only some of the times you called you could speak to Carol?
Only some of the times.
Can you give us an estimate from the time that was 1 month after you spoke to Deputy Ward, after that, approximately what percent of the times when you called for Carol at Wildwood you were successful at actually speaking to Carol?
There were quite a few times we'd get nothing. I thought we were cut off, and I'd call back. I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Did they give you a reason? Would they give you some, without going into what they said, would they tell you some reason as to why you couldn't talk to Carol?
Not really. It was pretty much, no, you can't. There was, after we did get to talk to her, it was right before Christmas. I tried to call to tell her Merry Christmas, and I was denied. I was told I wasn't allowed to talk to her again.
And how did that make you feel when you learned that you were not going to be allowed to wish Carol a Merry Christmas?
Terrible. I mean, knowing that she was in a place that pretty much kept her prisoner, you know, we weren't, I mean, we did the best we could.
Was there ever a time when Carol was at Wildwood where there was a time restriction put on how long you could talk to her on the phone?
Yes, later on.
And what was the time restriction?
We were told we could call, what was it, twice a week for 15 minutes.
Who told you that?
We were told by Mindy.
Did you ask why there was a restriction on phone calls?
No.
Okay. On the times where you called to talk to Carol and you were unsuccessful, would you ever leave a message to whoever you were talking to that they should pass on to Carol for you?
Yes, I got friendly with one of the women at the front desk. I think her name was Melissa. And it got to where if I wasn't allowed to talk to her, I'd ask Melissa if she would give Carol a hug and tell her I loved her. And she would say she would. So we got friendly.
When you, on the times you did talk to Carol, but before you visit her, did Carol ever complain about Wildwood to you?
All the time.
And what was her chief complaint?
That there was nothing for her. She didn't like the bus rides. She didn't do anything. She pretty much sat around in front of the TV set.
Did Carol ever ask you to do anything about trying to get her out of Wildwood?
She wanted to come home. She wanted to come back to Kansas City, Missouri.
Based on your observations of Carol on that first visit, where you saw her for those 3 days, did she seem to be happy about where she was?
No.
Okay. What was it about her demeanor or facial expression that led you to believe she wasn't happy?
She'd cry when we'd start to leave.
Was there an occasion during your first visit when you went to see Carol where Linda was allowed to visit with Carol at an arranged meeting at McDonald's?
Yes.
Okay. And who attended the lunch at McDonald's?
It was Linda, Richard, Martin, Becky, my mother, and I.
And were you allowed to visit with Carol at McDonald's unsupervised?
Oh, it was wonderful. Martin was standing at the door waiting for her to get off of that bus. And as soon as they saw each other, their eyes glistened, and Carol smiled.
Do you know at this point in time whether Martin was also prohibited from visiting Carol at Wildwood?
Yes, he was.
Okay. So this was the first time they'd seen each other in a while?
Yes.
Okay. How did Carol get to McDonald's for that visit?
They got a bus for her wheelchair to go in and brought her. Wildwood brought her.
And did Wildwood leave someone there to supervise the visit?
Oh, yes.
Okay. So you weren't allowed to be completely alone with Carol?
No.
And can you tell us about the McDonald's luncheon? Was it a happy occasion, or can you just describe for us what the interaction was like?
It was wonderful. I mean, Martin didn't leave Carol's side. Anything she wanted or needed, we would jump up and get. I mean, she was smiling from ear to ear. She was happy to be out and around the people that loved her.
And at some point, the visit came to an end. What was Carol's reaction when the visit came to an end?
When she knew she had to go back, she didn't want to. She wanted to fight, and she wanted to stay with us. So she was in tears.
Okay. Is there anything else that sticks in your mind about the first visit that's significant that we haven't covered?
Well, on day 2, because on day 1 when we went back, and from earlier noticing that my aunt had a mattress on the floor in her room, my sister had a video camera and she brought it into the place, and she was videotaping the room and what she saw at Wildwood. The second day we go to see her, and Wildwood brings out Big Candy to try to intimidate us.
Who's Big Candy?
She was, I was told she was my aunt's nurse.
Okay. So, when you saw the mattress on the floor, did you ask anyone at Wildwood why Carol was sleeping on the floor?
I don't think it was me, but my sister did.
Okay. What did you think of the fact that Wildwood had Carol sleeping on a mattress on the floor?
I thought if Mindy could have found someplace cheaper, she probably would have. To put her in a place that didn't even have a bed for her was ridiculous. But we were told that she was put on the floor so she wouldn't fall out of bed.
And did you accept that explanation?
No.
Why not?
Because it's ridiculous to put anyone on the floor. There's no reason why the bed rails wouldn't have kept her in the bed.
Was Carol able to get from a standing position to the mattress and then back up easily, or was that a difficult process?
Not at all.
Can you describe what the process was like when Carol had to go from a standing position to get to the mattress?
When my sister and I changed her diaper, pretty much I had the top part and Becky had the bottom part, and we just slowly leaned her down onto the bed, and then we helped her get up.
Did you have the video camera with you the second day?
The second day, yes.
And what happened when you brought out the video camera the second, or what happened when you went to Wildwood the second day with a video camera?
Oh, that's when they got Big Candy to come out.
And Candy was a nurse?
Was supposed to be my aunt's nurse.
When you say Big Candy, can you explain why you're calling her big?
Oh, she's about 6 foot tall and very wide.
Okay. And did Big Candy have any objection to the camera being, or what happened with Big Candy?
They never mentioned a camera, not once. But we were told to take our purses and put them in our car. We weren't allowed to bring our purses in. So when we got to the trunk of the car, I told my mother to put her camera down her shirt. We put the purses in the car and we walked right in. And at that time, Candy had moved from the front of the facility.
And what was the reason for taking the camera to Wildwood?
To take pictures of my aunt.
Okay, so it was more to have family photos together.
Yes.
with Carol?
Yes.
Okay. When you were visiting with Carol on the 2 occasions that you came from Missouri to see her, did you ever have to clean up Carol because there was no Wildwood people around?
There was a time that her shirt was stained, and we asked someone if they would clean her up. And they came, oh, we're going to clean her up, and walked away with her and brought her right back in different clothing.
So they changed your shirt?
They changed her shirt.
Okay. Did you ever form the opinion that the Wildwood employees were told not to talk to you?
Yes.
Was any of the Wildwood employees chatty and friendly with you?
Melissa at the front desk, from calling all the time, and when we weren't allowed to talk to Carol, she and I got to where we would talk to each other. Like I said earlier, if I wasn't allowed to speak to Aunt Carol, I'd ask her to go back and give her a hug and tell her I love her. And I hope she did that. But pretty much, I doubt if it happened.
And Melissa, was she one of the better ones at Wildwood in terms of conversing with you?
She was the only one that would.
She was the only one at Wildwood that would talk to you?
That would talk to us. There was one time I had heard that my aunt had fallen. She had fallen down. So I called Wildwood to see how my aunt was. Candy was put on the phone just to tell me that I could get no information.
You had indicated previously that Carol Hahn had a boyfriend while she was at Wildwood Canyon Villa. Who was her boyfriend?
Martin?
Are you aware that Martin has testified under sworn testimony that he did not have a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship with her?
No, I was not.
Are you aware of any physician orders regarding Carol Hahn's diet while she was at Wildwood?
No.
Do you know a place called Mission Commons, or have you heard of a place called Mission Commons?
No.
Have you heard of a place called Roswell's?
No.
Do you have any medical training or medical experience in the medical field?
Other than raising a child, being a daycare teacher, no.
The first time that you visited Carol, was that for about an hour and a half on the first day?
Pardon me?
The first day that you visited Carol at Wildwood Canyon Villa, was that for about an hour and a half?
I'd say it was longer.
How long would you say that visit was?
I'd say 2 to 3 hours. And then we went to
And the
check in.
second day, I apologize, please continue.
Then we went to check into our hotel, and we came back later that same day.
And was that second visit, that first day, an additional period of time beyond the 2 or 3 hours?
Yes.
How many additional hours was that second visit the first day?
I'd say 2 to 3 hours.
So between 4 to 6 hours were your total time with Carol on the first day you came in from California?
Yes. Our main concern was seeing Carol and making sure she was alive.
The second day that you came back to Wildwood Canyon Villa, about what time did you come to the facility?
It was afternoon.
About how many hours on the second day did you spend at the facility visiting Carol?
I'd say 3 to 4 hours.
And the third day, September 29, which was a Wednesday, you attended court with your mother, Clara, and Linda Kincaid in San Bernardino?
Yes.
Did you visit with Carol prior to that visit that morning on the 29th of September, that Wednesday?
I don't remember.
What time did you go to visit Carol after the court hearing?
I don't remember.
About how many hours would you estimate you spent visiting with Carol on Wednesday, September 29th?
I don't remember.
Did you understand, did you know that Mr. Flory, or that court-appointed attorney for Carol Hahn, had visited her while at Wildwood Canyon prior to that court hearing?
Yes, he told us that.
And were you aware that he was working with a third-party organization who was looking into her visitation and living situation?
No. He did.
Have you heard of an organization? Sorry, I apologize. Please continue.
He had mentioned that he had been by to see Carol. He also informed us that he had not gone to her room.
Have you heard of an organization called Parent Care Management?
No.
Did you ever speak with a Carolyn McAllis?
No.
Did you call Carol Hahn every hour on the hour when you found out she was at Wildwood?
Not at first. It was a few weeks before I did that, because I had gotten tired of being told no every other time I called her.
And for how many weeks did you call Wildwood on the hour every hour to get a hold of Carol?
I'd say I did that 3 days in a row, and then I got a call from Lynette, and after Lynette, I got a call from Mindy.
What time do you get up? What was your practice or your habit as far as getting up in the morning at about that time in your life in 2010?
I worked any place from 7 o'clock to sometimes overnights. I would get up on my way to work that I had to be there at 7:30. I would call from my car. As soon as I opened the store, I would call. Every hour I made sure I stopped and called.
And that was starting at about 7:30 in the morning?
About 7:30 on. Some nights as long as 10 o'clock.
You're aware of the time difference between Kansas and California?
Yes, I was.
And that's a 2-hour time difference?
We'll stipulate to that.
Ma'am, are you aware that that was a 2-hour time difference?
I did know there was a time difference, yes.
Did on October 29, 2010, Linda Kincaid was in San Bernardino in the courtroom with you?
Yes.
Had you seen her earlier that day before court?
Yes.
Did you ever call Carol Hahn at any other facility other than Wildwood Canyon?
No.
So when Carol Hahn was at Roswell's, you didn't call Roswell's to speak with her there, is that correct?
That's correct.